Now we start with the chapter of bio, that is cell, the unit of life. So this being the first chapter, because the first chapter of bio, the textbook major first chapter, that is not required. The introduction to biology is not required. That is not in syllabus of the 10th standard portion also. So we go directly to the chapter number 2, that is cell, the unit of life. Now the cell is said to be as the structural and functional unit of all living organism. What do you mean by this? When we talk about, so we say that cell is structural and functional unit of life. So what do you mean by first structural? Structural means that the complete structure of the living organism, the body, that may be the body of a bacteria or a body of a huge tree or a body of a human being or a body of a small cat or a mouse, any particular living organism, it is made up of, the whole organism is made up of very tiny substances called as cell. Okay, they are not a substance, it is organs which is called as cells. So that's why we say that cell is the structural unit of the body. Like for example, if we are talking about this building, the bricks and the concrete is the structural unit of this building. So brick by brick we have made this complete building. Accordingly, here cell by cell our body has been developed, or it has been structured. So that's why we say that cell is the structural unit of life. The second thing is cell is the functional unit of life. So when we talk about functional unit, what do you mean by functional unit? Each and every function that the body does. The body is doing some other function, right? For example, like right now I am speaking and at the same time you are listening or you are viewing me. So when you are doing all these things of viewing or listening or speaking or thinking, everything what we are doing is done by a cell. So that's why all the functions of our body, my moving my hand like this, my speaking, everything, each and everything, you're eating something, the bacteria का movement, bacteria का injection of the food, जो भी है, सब कुछ, that everything, all the functions what they are doing are done by a cell. Hence cell is the functional unit of life. Accordingly, the combinedly we say that cell is a unit of life, which is cell is a structural and functional unit of life. We also know that cell is the originating part of our body. So when everybody starts, each and every living organism starts its life cycle with a single cell. Like we were made of a formation of a zygote, that is the fertilization of the sperm and the egg, giving us the first kind of a fertilized egg. That is how we started generating ourselves, or we started our life cycle. Similarly, plant, the seed is the life cycle. So seed is giving rise to the plant. So that is how it is going to be formed. Any bacteria or something, they are going to be just dividing one cell by just cell division. So one cell, two cell, four cells, and so on. So that's why that is the life cycle of the cell. So we can see that all organisms, including our cells, start life as a single cell called egg. Okay, we start our life as a single cell, that is nothing but the egg. So we start our life with the egg. So we see certain things which are written over here. A cell, what is a cell? The cell is a fundamental, structural and functional unit of all living beings. It is the smallest part of the body of an organism which is capable of independent existence and of performing the essential functions of life. So that's why we see that it is the structural function unit, and it is capable of independent existence. That's the important part. It is capable of independent existence and performing all the essentials functions of the life. Every organ in our body, the skin, the brain, muscles, even the bones, is composed of hundreds and thousands of such cells. Similarly, every part of the plant, the leaf, of the flower, the root, and even the wood is composed of an exceedingly large number of cells. Every cell has its own life. Old and weak cells in the body continually die and are replaced by new cells. All organisms, including ourselves, start life as a single cell called the egg. Cells are so small that they cannot be seen with the naked eye. It is therefore natural that their existence could not be detected by man until he invented magnifying aids in the form of microscopes. So till the time the cells are so tiny that it can never be seen by a naked eye. And because we cannot see it by the naked eye, that's why the only option for us to see, or the first time we could see them, was when magnifying glasses or magnifying aids were formed. So that is, the first microscope was being formed. It was first constructed by a Dutch scientist named Anthony van Leeuwenhoek. So Anthony van Leeuwenhoek was the first person who invented microscope. He lived from 1632 to 1723, and he used many types of different kinds of lenses, or lenses banake he made into something what we call it as a simple microscope, which is a single biconvex lens. We don't need to go about the details of the microscope as such, because that's not required. But yeah, we need to know that he is of Anthony van Leeuwenhoek was the one who made the Leeuwenhoek was the one who made the first microscope. But it was Robert Hooke, a scientist, English scientist, who developed a microscope by using two lenses for achieving greater magnification. So what van Leeuwenhoek made was a simple microscope, which was only one simple kind of biconvex lens. But Robert Hooke, he made a higher magnification kind. So he made the microscope having two lenses, and that gave rise to a compound microscope. And it was only through a compound microscope that we can see a cell. So in Hooke's microscope, the object to be seen placed in the stage below the light from an oil flame was thrown into it by means of concave lens. So there was a concave mirror over there, then was a light over there. So concave mirror से light लैम्प से लाइट मिरर पे आता था, और उसके बाद वो जाता था एक प्लेट के ऊपर जहाँ पे वो ऑब्जेक्ट रखा था जिसको मैग्नीफाई करना है, एंड देन विद द हेल्प ऑफ two lenses, the magnification of the thing was taking place. So Hooke, that is Robert Hooke, examined a slice of a cork inside his microscope, and he could see that the magnification के बाद में the cork के अंदर he saw something like this. So he saw something like this in the cork. So in this way, he saw something like this, which looks like a honeycomb, and he also thought and looking at this as something like a monastery. Now, if you see a Buddhist monastery, the Buddhist monastery has got such kind of cubicles in it. These cubicles are the one wherein the priest of the Buddhist monks, they sit inside and do their meditation. And these rooms are called as cell. So because this resembled as the cell of a Buddhist monk, that's in a monastery, therefore the name cell was given to this particular thing, which we call it as cell as such. So so basically the cell which Hooke saw were all dead cells, and they had only the empty boxes of the walls. The ordinary microscope, compound microscope of today is greatly improved. Of course, that is the design wise. And so, yeah, I missed out this thing that Hooke examined a thin slice of cork under his microscope and observed that it was made of tiny box-like compartments piled up together. This reminded him of the rooms or cells of monks in the monastery. So he said that the cork are made up of cells. So this is how the name cell was given to this particular organ. Now, of course, nowadays the invention of the electron microscope is there, added further to the unknown facts about cells. It can give a magnification over 2 lakh times as against a ordinary compound microscope. So what actually Robert Hooke saw was, say, 2 lakh times magnified is what we can see now with a electron microscope. So this which magnify up to object up to a maximum of about 2000 times. So whatever the size of the object, it is magnified 2000 times. That is the capacity of the electron microscope. The ordinary compound microscope uses light which is bent by a glass lens to magnify the image, which the electron microscope uses beams of electrons which are bent by magnets. Now we come to the part of cell that is called as cell theory. So the basic thing over here is cell theory. Very, very important. In 1838, Matthias Schwenden, a German botanist, announced that every plant is made up of large number of cells. He added that each of these cells perform various life processes. A year later, Theodor Schwann, a German zoologist, made similar discoveries in animals. He declared that all animals and plants are composed of cells which serve as the unit of structure and function. This, in short, is called as the cell theory. So you can see that cell theory was being proposed by 2 scientists. One who was a botanist. Botanist is the one who is going to study plants, and other was zoologist who studies animals. And both of them, on studying the cells, they found that their results were very similar, that each and every plant and each and every animal, both are going to have their structural unit as cell and the functional unit as cell. Hence, in short, in the cell theory have been proposed by Schwann and Schillen in the year 1839 is that animals and plants are composed of cells which serve as unit of structure and function. So this was the main thing about the theory what they are given. And then later on, around 20 years later, that is 1858, Rudolf Virchow, he made an addition to the cell theory by saying that all cells arrive from pre-existing cells. So that means the one cell is never going to just generate by itself. It is going to be coming into picture by an existing cell. So there is one cell earlier which brought about this cell, and this will bring about another cell. Hence, the cells are going to be generated only by some pre-existing cells. So accordingly, we have got 3 points, or the 3 kind of major points of the cell theory. The first thing is the cell over here is the structural unit. So we can say the first thing is that the cell theory states 3 major points. The cell is the smallest unit of structure of all living things. So it is the smallest unit of structure. Okay, that means it's a structural unit of the body. The second thing is the cell is the unit of function of all living things. So again, the next thing will be function. So all the functional units jitna bhi hai, that is going to be the cell. So that is the second point. And the third point, which was given by Rudolf Virchow, is that all cells arise from pre-existing cells. So pre-existing cells is the next point, that arise. They arise from pre-existing cells. So these are the 3 main points of the cell theory. The first one is the cell is the smallest unit, which is the structural unit of the living organism. The second is the cell is the functional unit of all living things. And finally, all cells, they arise from a pre-existing cell. So this is what we understand, that structural unit यानी, as I told you earlier also, that each and every body part is made up of cells. So the cell is going to be forming the structure of the body. And functional wise also, each and every function of body, whether it is externally seen or internally, like internally we are respiring, we are doing the process of respiration, or internally we are producing so many enzymes, we are producing gastric juice, we are producing different type of enzymes for the digestive system, or the salivary glands producing the saliva, or the tears, or maybe basically any kind of the function which is done by the body is done by the cell. So that is why it is called as the functional unit of the thing. And the next thing they are given is cell die and are replaced. So cells are going to not be there infinitely in our body. They are going to live for a certain number of time, from some period, and then it is going to die. And while they are dying, they are going to divide into two parts, and accordingly it is going to form into a cycle of the cell will be there. Cell division is going to take place. So new cells are going to be generated by the older ones. So the older ones die and are replaced by new ones. So that is why formation is going to be like a never ending chain, that the new cells are keen to keep on developing. And the last thing is that all life starts as a single cell. So life of a frog, life of a mango tree, or everything starts with an egg or a seed. So it is going to be that particular egg or a seed which is going to mature and become the plant or the living organism, like the animal or a plant or a human being also. So the mango seed has an embryo which also starts as a single cell in the ovary of the flower of the parent mango. So everything is going to be starting with a single cell. Now we talk about cells and how numerous they are, what are the sizes and things like that. So let's see, the next point is about the different kinds of cells. So first thing is, an organism can be defined or they can be classified based on the number of cells that particular organism is having. If the organism has only one single cell, then they are called as a single-celled organism, or single-celled, like all the bacteria, yeast, amoeba. All these are examples of single-celled organisms which are just having one particular cell. Then there will be the one which will be few cells. They may be not having multiple cells, but some few cells, some 10 cells or 15 cells, or maybe slightly more than that. So there will be some very small plants or animals are made up of relatively few cells, and it could be few hundreds to few thousands. So that is examples of Spirogyra, volvox are the examples wherein they are made up of a certain number of cells. So that is a few cells. And finally, multi-cell, like us, all animals, plants, they are multi-cell because we have got millions and millions of cells in us. So most of the plants and animals, including ourselves, have millions and billions of cells. And so human beings, mangoes, everything has got their own set of millions and billions of cells. On an average, it is given that an adult human being will be having 1,000 million cells in the whole body, and it will be having 10,000 million nerve cells in our brain cortex, 5 to 6 million red blood cells, and 7,000 white blood cells per cubic millimeter. That means if I just got one dot of blood, maybe that is bigger than that. So this dot of blood, if I'm having, it will be having around 7,000 white blood cells and 5 to 6 million red blood cells in 1 cubic meter. That is just one drop of blood. Okay. Now we see the size of the cell. Now, as for the size of the cell, of course, we know they are very, very, very small because we cannot see them by naked eyes. We need microscopes to see them. But there are certain cells which are big ones. So first thing are the smallest are that of the bacteria, which are very very small. It is just 0.3 to 0 to about 5 micrometers. Micrometers is 10 to minus 6. So accordingly it will be 0.000005 meters. So red blood cells are around 7 micrometers of the human body. The largest, now we are talking about the longest one, so not largest, longest one is the one which is the nerve cell. The nerve cells of our body or any particular animal will be the longest one, because the nerve cells, they start from the spinal cord over here and they could go as long as to the tips of my hand. So from ear to ear, approximately around 1 meter long. Similarly, if it's an elephant, automatically the size will be bigger. So accordingly, or even the one with the spinal cord to the tip of my legs, so automatically that becomes one more longer than this one. So we see that the longest are the nerve cells, which are extending from the tips of the fingers to the spinal cord inside the backbone. The largest one will be of course the egg, and of course the egg may be ostrich egg becomes the biggest one. So you see, the ostrich egg is the largest single cell of a living world today. The white of the egg, that is the albumin of the egg, and the eggshell are extra parts added on the actual egg as it passes down the reproductive tract. So actually the egg के अंदर का जो yellow yolk है, that is the cell. The white part and the shell part is not the part of the cell. It is an extra part for protection. So reproductive tract में से जब भी बाहर निकलता है तो it gives that protection to it. Otherwise the egg, or we can say the single cell, is just the yellow yolk part of the egg. Now let us see that first of all, why is the cell so tiny? इतना छोटा क्यों है? Why should it be so tiny? Why cannot be like एक cell इधर, एक cell इधर, एक cell इधर, एक cell इधर? Why could not it be that way? Now, firstly is that smaller the cell, easier to replace it, and even if some of the cells are damaged, it will not harm the complete body. Right? Like for example, I got so many hair. If one of the hair gets removed, does it actually make me bald? Not at all. It doesn't make any difference at all. Similarly, if I got millions and billions of cells, if around when I'm rubbing like this and some 100 cells also get damaged, does it really make it difficult for me to survive? No, not at all. So that is one part, that is, the smaller the cell, it is easier to replace and repair. Okay, the first thing is, now okay, they are given over here one more thing, and that is different regions of the cell can communicate with each other rapidly for the cell to function effectively. So the main reason for the smaller size is, firstly, is that the cells can communicate with each other more rapidly when they are too tiny. So if it is like एक सेल इधर दोनों बाजू बाजू में है और छोटे हैं, तो वहां से यहाँ का transportation of nutrients, transportation of communication between the two is faster and easier if they are too tiny. We can take a small example for this thing. Suppose there are, I need to pass on something from this place to this place, and so if it would happen that one person is doing that thing, he will have to take it, carry it and bring it over here. If two people are doing it, he will just carry it, then pass it to this one and then pass it to one. But suppose there are 10 people over here, then they will just keep on passing it very effectively, and none of them is going to get tired, and everything is getting transferred from year to year easily. So you can see, if the number of cells are more over here for the same distance, automatically it is easier to transport anything from one place to another place. So smaller the cell, the easier for transportation or communication from one point to another point. That is one thing. Second thing is that cell, if they are small, it will have a larger surface area to volume ratio. Now what do we mean by this? Let's consider a particular kind of a cube. So if this is a cube, okay. Now this cube is such that this cube is like this, which is 2 centimeters here, or make it millimeters. Not, let's take it much smaller. So let's take 2 millimeters here and 2 millimeters here. So accordingly, what is the surface area over here? We know that surface area will be 2 over here, 2 over here, 2 over here, when 6 sides. So 6 into 2 into 2. So that will be 6 2 is 12, 12 is 24. So 24 square millimeter will be the surface area. That means if a cell is this much big, then it can communicate with 24 square mm of area around it. Okay. Now let's see what is going to happen over here is, suppose instead of having just one single cell such big, I divide it into parts like this. Then there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 smaller cells of 1 mm each. 1 mm by 1 mm. So this is 1 mm, 1 mm, 1 mm, 1 mm. Piche uske 1 mm, 1 mm, 1 mm, 1 mm. So there are now 8 small cells or cubes of 1 mm each. So here, what is the surface area of each? Surface area is 6 into 1 into 1 into 1, and 6 into 1, and 6 into 1 into how many are there? There are going to be 8 such boxes. Accordingly, this is going to be 48 square mm. So you can see over here, just by reducing the size by half, my surface area got doubled. Got it? Instead of using one big one, I used 8 small ones, and my surface area became double for the same volume. So ये हाथ इतने का इतना ही है, but the moment I make it into small parts, automatically each and every surface area is going to communicate with each other, giving rise to a total square millimeter of 48 instead of 24. So that tells you that the smaller the size of the cell, more will be the surface area to volume ratio. For the same volume, the number of cells are more, hence the surface area will be more, hence the communication, hence the nutrition transfer, everything is going to be much faster when we take this kind of consideration. Understood? Now we come to the part about the different shapes and the functions of the functional requirements of the cell. So first thing is, the cell vary greatly in shape. This may be disc-like, polygonal, rectangular, cuboid, thread-like, branch, irregular. The shapes of cells are often related to the different functions they perform. So each and every cell will be having different kind of shapes and sizes depending upon where they are placed and where their functions are. So they will be of different kinds and different nature. So they are given a figure over there which is having around 9 to 10, oh okay, 10 it is 11 different kinds of shapes, like epithelial cell, which is of like a cuboid ones. Then there are human blood cells, then cartilages, then connective tissue, striated muscles, nerve cells, bone cells. All these are given over here in different forms. So we see over here, human red blood cells are circular and biconcave to pass through narrow capillaries and transport oxygen. The white blood cells are amoeboidal, that is shape of amoeba, that means it doesn't have any shape at all. Amoeba-like movement with pseudopodia that can squeeze out through capillary walls. We know that's what happens is, if this is the capillary wall over here, if this is the white blood cell has a capacity that it can ooze out from a very tiny gap over here like this. So अंदर से घुस के बाहर निकलेगा, ऐसे करके बाहर निकलते जाएगा और पूरा बाहर निकलेगा. यानी it can from the cell wall, it can just come out over here from the capillary walls. It can come out over here to attack the viruses or the bacteria which are here. So this movement over here is called as the diapedesis. So this is normally also the way the amoeba moves. Hence, it is given over here that pseudopodial movement of the amoeba. Now, cells are long to conduct impulses from distant parts of the body to the brain and vice versa. So, as I told you, from the tip of the finger to the nervous system, to the spinal cord, and spinal cord to the brain to tell me that somebody touched me here. So that is done by the nerve cells. Muscle cells are the long and contractile to pull or squeeze the parts. So muscles, they are going to help in squeezing this part. So movement of the hands, everything is done by the muscles. So that's why they are long and contractile. They can easily expand and contract so that it can hold things properly. And finally, guard cells of the stomatal pore in the leaves are bean shaped to open and close the pore. So they are bean shaped so that it can open and close the pore, which is given in the pores, that the stomata of the cell. So if there's a leaf के नीचे stomata होता है जहाँ से carbon dioxide is going to go in for photosynthesis. So that was the different shapes of the cell. And finally, now see the structure of the cell. So we see the various kind of cells have showed different special differences. Yet they all have some basic structural plan which may be expressed in terms of generalized cells. So we can easily generalize the structure of the cell by knowing a certain number of cell organelles which are present inside the cell. So basically the generalized cell consists of three essential parts. The cell membrane, that is the plasma membrane. Second is nucleus, and third is cytoplasm. The structure of generalized cell and the generalized cell parts which can be seen under the microscope. The figure is what we will be learning now. Now, the cell के अंदर के छोटे organs जो होते हैं, they are called as cell organelles. So cell organelles, the little organs, most parts of the cell are defined, of a definite shape, a definite structure, and a definite function. So each and every cell organelle will have a definite shape, structure, and function. So that's why it is easy to identify them and to know them. Such parts called organelles. The organelles have the same status in the cell as the organs have in our entire body in the animal or the plant cell, specific function. So cell organelles are living parts. So जैसे हमारे body में heart, lungs, kidney, stomach, ये सब organs का importance है. Similarly, cell has got the organs which are called as the cell organelles, which has got its own importance for its existence in our body. So that's why the cell organelles are all, most of them, as living organisms. Okay, so we'll stop here for this video and we discuss the structure of the cell and the cell organelles in the next one.